Hey all, and welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to be looking at Azure Storage, the different ways you can access it, and the ways you can protect your data that's sitting inside of it. This video is good for developers and also for architects. So with that, I've got some explaining to do. Let's get started. Okay, so let's start with access. Now, when accessing Azure Blob Storage, we're going to go through one of three ways. One, we're going to use the software development kit, or better known as the SDK. This could be for one of our programming languages such as .NET, Node.js, or Python. The next way is we're going to go to the Azure Blob REST HTTP endpoint and work in there. The last way, which is most likely, is you're probably using a built-in connector, and this could be inside Power BI, Azure Data Factory, or even third-party tools like Tableau. So with that, once we've chosen the way we're going in, the next part is we need a piece of identity to access Azure Blob Storage. This can be one of three ways. It could be that we're passing in an account key, or we could be getting a shared access token, or lastly, we could be going through with an Azure Active Directory identity, either our own or a service principal, which is more appropriate for applications. So the question is, how do we get all of them? Let's go across to Azure Blob Storage and have a look at how we can grab them. Alright, so here we are in the Azure portal. And first we're going to go to our storage account. So let's go to our storage account. Now the first question that we're going to ask, or the developer's going to ask us, is I want to access with a connection string. And they're going to say, can I use the account key? So for that, we're going to go across the left-hand side and go to access keys. And then inside of access keys, we'll hit show keys. Now you'll notice for access keys, you've got two keys. And here's the connection string. So I just copy that and give that to the developer. It's advisable that you rotate these keys over times, every 3 months, every 6 months, according to your security practices that you have in place. Now, the reason why we rotate it is because that key gives the developer read, write, delete access across the whole storage account. So that's every container. Now that's not too granular in terms of security, so how can we get a little bit more granular? The second option you can ask your developer if it's okay for, or as a developer ask for yourself, is by using a shared access token. So let's go to shared access signature here, better known as SAS. And inside of here, we can see that we can use blob, file, queue, and table. You'll notice the other thing is we can basically tell it to either go at the service level, like that access key before, or we can go down to a container level. And inside the container, we can configure different options. So read, write, list, add. You'll notice it's a lot more granular. The next part is we can also set a start and expiry time. And we have to do this. This means that this token that we give the developer is going to last 6 months to 12 months. And that's why it's good for that. Then you'll notice what we do is we go generate SAS and connection string. And again, you'll see this is the SAS token here, and you'll see the connection string here. So that's what you pass on to the developer. Now, that's the second option. The third option is that we go through an Azure Active Directory account. Now, if we go through an Azure Active Directory account, we're going to go to access control here, and we're going to go to role assignments. Now, inside the role assignments, we can see that Coda Meets Data, my Azure Active Directory, has an owner level to this storage account. It means I can do basically anything to the storage account. But I could also go here, go add role assignment, and then click here and choose my options. So if I go to contributor inside of here, you'll see down here I've got storage blob data contributor, which is basically giving me access to contribute blobs across the whole account. Now, suppose that I didn't want to give it at the account level, I could also go down to the container level, click into a container, and also do the same process in access control for that container. Now, if you want to go even granular than the container level, we can also go to the folder level if we've got hierarchical namespace turned on. So go across to overview, and inside of here, you'll see a hierarchical namespace. If we go through the wizard and actually enable that and upgrade, you'll notice that you have much more granular level of control, and you'll be able to do it at the file level similar to RBAC on premise. So with that, those are the three different ways of passing an identity through to Azure Storage. and for using either through the SDK for the REST endpoint or for a third-party tool, or for a first-party tool. Alright, so we've granted access or we have access to the Azure Blob Storage. The next part is how we protect the data. So we've got a couple of options. So let's go back into the Azure Storage account. And inside the Azure Storage account, we're going to go down on the left-hand side, down to Data Management and down to Data Protection. Once inside Data Protection, we've got two different sections, Recovery and Tracking. So inside of Recovery, you'll see that we can enable operational backup with Azure Backup. Azure Backup is Microsoft's first-party backup solution inside of Azure. My other options are that I can enable point-in-time restore for containers, which is good. So we can go back to a previous state for all of the blobs in our container. The next part here is we can enable soft delete for blobs. Now, soft delete means that when a person deletes a blob inside of blob storage, that it's going to hold it for the amount of days that I have here. So you can see here that I'm holding it for 7 days after it's been deleted. The next part is tracking. So you'll see here that we can enable versioning for blobs. So in the case that we want to store the different versions as they're written or overridden and updated for the blobs, we can do that inside our Azure Blob Storage. And with that, we've looked at recovery and tracking for our blob storage. Now, let's suppose that we don't want either of them, but the data is compromised. If it is compromised, we're probably wanting to look to lock the account in a way to prevent people from doing updates, deletes, maybe even being read-only only. So let's go into that. So we're on the left-hand side and we'll go into locks. And I'll just hit OK there to discard my changes. But inside of the locks, you can see here that we're going to go add, and then we're going to choose the lock type. So you'll see here we can lock it and basically say we don't want deletes to happen across the container or the account. You'll notice the other part we can do is make it read-only, so people can't modify, update, or the blobs that are inside the container. So you'll see there, that's how we lock it. The last part for if it's compromised, we also might want to say that we want to lock a specific container. So how can we do that? If we go to containers and go into here, we can see that we can actually set an access policy. Now the one I want to show you is this immutable blob storage. And if we hover on this, we can see that we can set a policy that basically means all the containers in the blobs are non-modifiable and are in a delete protected state. You'll see here that when I go add policy, I can do a policy type of legal hold, which is going to basically hold it indefinitely for the time period that we've got it on. The other option is we might want to specify a time period. So we can also go time-based retention as well. And this is going to set the retention for the number of days that we want it to be immutable. So with that, those are our options for locking it down. We can either make it immutable or lock it at that account level and basically take our options. And that's it. So that's how we protect it and how we can recover and how we can track. So I think that's data protection covered. And we're done. So how did you find that? If I asked you, give me the connection string or the account key for the Azure Storage account, could you give it? Or maybe I asked for a SaaS token. Or maybe you're asked by somebody in the organization to give specific access to an O365 or Azure Active Directory user to a file, container, account, or folder level. Could you do it? And now that they've got access, are you happy that you can set up the sufficient data protection policies such that if something bad happens in the future, everything's covered? Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, give me a like and a subscribe. But otherwise, this is Coder Meets Data signing out, and I'll see you in the next one.